All right. We're live. We're live. We're good. We're on. Okay. All right. Cool. What's going on, folks? How's it going? Another edition of Banter Blitz, Community Banter Blitz. We're gonna get into some games. We're gonna have some fun with it. I was trying to actually pull out I was trying to get the pop out chat here so I can read chat while folks are yeah, can you? Okay, you'll send me a link. Cool, cool, cool. So I'll have like a pop-out chat I can kind of look at, make sure I'm up to date with, comments, questions, concerns. Yeah, so we're gonna play some chess. I do take suggestions from, around openings and so on and so forth. So if you want to see me play, any type of opening you want, I think I might veto the Bong Cloud just out of respect for my opponent. I don't want to horse around too much where it gets kind of borderline disrespectful or crazy. But otherwise, I will be palatable. So anyway, so I think we got, my colleague Ajay is here. Thank you for setting this all up. And we also have Ben in the background, basically gonna essentially help out and get these challenges through. And so Ben, you can hit me. I'm ready to go. We can get rolling. All right, so Immortal. So I guess I'm gonna play the English first. I think we might see this in the upcoming World Championship match. G6. Okay, I'll play Knight C3. And it looks like we're about to get some King's Indian vibes. C5. Okay, this is actually a really interesting line because after D5, bishop takes C3 is an idea where essentially black gives up the dark square bishop, but yeah, they play this with F5, and this is a very, very tricky line, which I don't remember too much of. The idea is that my structure is damaged, but I have the bishop pair. I need to pry open the position somehow. How do I do that? I think H4 might be an interesting way. It's really connected around playing for E4, connecting for or playing for H5. One of these levers is important to try and open up the position. It's critically important that white opens up the position before the weaknesses become a real issue. So H4 is a kind of creative way to do that. Um, We'll see how that goes. We will see how that goes. What black should do? Well, H5 is kind of dangerous. I think knight F6 might have been an option. Okay, so queen A5, idea to take on C3. I'm not so impressed by that double pawn. I'm gonna ignore. I can block with bishop D2, and yeah, they get another pawn, but I think it's more important that I press onward and not defend this really not impressive double pawn. So the idea with H5 is that I'm threatening H takes G6, which is a pin. And queen takes c3 check is a move, but after bishop d2, I get a tempo on the queen, and the queen had to stay tethered to the rook to justify this idea because otherwise did have h takes g6. All right, so I'm gonna go rook c1, I think maybe, and try to get bishop c3 in as a tempo. That makes sense to me. Knight f6. This knight is kind of it's not impressive. Um, the question is, do I play h6 or do I play bishop c3? If bishop c3, there might be queen h6 and pinning me. But should I care? No, I don't care. I'm going to go bishop c3. I'm going to keep the tension here for a moment because I might be interested if black castles and taking on g6 and opening up the h rook. So that's an idea. And yeah, I think again, black is a pawn up, sure, but look at the energy. I have more space in the center, and I have a little bit of flank initiative here. That should comp mean something. So I'm gonna keep developing and act like I'm good. Knight BD7 is an idea. Okay, now I'm really intrigued by knight G5. Knight G5 to E6. That is a really nasty outpost. If I can get the knight there, I'd be pretty happy. And I am going to get the knight there, attack the queen on G7, and threaten knight C7 fork. And you can see the pieces are really coming alive. This is a winning position, folks. I'm going to throw in H takes G6 because I do want this H file open, and I still have knight C7 next. And this is trouble in paradise for my opponent here because I'm going to pick off. Should I give it? I can also give a check and repeat once, but I'm going to take that rook You might get the knight back if you try to, trap it maybe with b6, bishop b7, but I am going to be a rook up for the time being, and if the knight comes off, I'll be up in exchange. And my king is not castled, which is not the greatest, but I still have plenty of activity with my pieces. All right, so rook f8 is interesting. I'm gonna go queen d2. I'm looking at the h6 pawn. I want that pawn. I wanna get somewhere with that. I am walking into a knight e4 fork, but I wanted to get that pawn. So h5 is played. That's fine. And I'm gonna go queen f4. I think that's a nice square. Kind of shuts down the rook, the f rook on f8, the f5 pawn. Just kind of trying to establish some control. So. Um, Again, maybe in some point in the future, bishop a5 check might be useful. Right now, it's not really because b6 blocks. I'm just trying to kind of consolidate my position here. My next few moves, what do they look like? Probably something like g3, maybe bishop g2, maybe e3, bishop e2. All right, so knight b6, trying to get that knight respect. That makes a lot of sense. Um, what do I do? I think I'll just. Mm, I think I'll just go with what I said. I'll go g3, bishop g2. Look, they're going to win my knight. That's understood. I'm just going to kamikaze it for a pawn. But I'm still up in exchange, and that counts for something. My bishop on f3 is kind of nice because it looks at the h5 pawn, kind of freezes the knight on f6. So I still have some control, which is good. Um, yeah, interesting position. Interesting position, for sure. Um, Oh, what can black do? Well, black has a few interesting ideas. One might be to bring the knight to e4. The other might be putting the knight to g4. The rook on f8 is protected, so there is no bishop takes e4 winning material. Other idea is b5 to kind of break open this position and undermine my chain. And to be honest, that move is a little annoying. I think I am winning there, but it is annoying and it's played. The point is that I really don't want to lose that pawn that's a part of the chain. It's kind of a critically important pawn. Um, and it kind of quickens up the game, sharpens up the game in a way I don't like. I'm going to take on f6. It is kind of controversial to give up that nice dark square bishop, but I just want to kind of trade a little bit and relieve some of the pressure on the d5 pawn. All right, rook takes is probably a mistake. I would take up to a take with the knight to still maintain pressure on d5. So now I am going to play c takes b5 because there's no pressure on the d5 pawn, and the two connecteds doesn't hurt. All right, knight b6, attacking d5 again. I'm just going to modestly defend it. I just want to keep things under control. And again, there's just too many ideas here. I'm going to go a4. Actually, this is kind of greedy, but wow, e5. Aggressive hitting my queen, but I have en passant. It is a move. That's when if a pawn moves two squares and it on one move and your pawn is adjacent, you can capture diagonally. Weird rule. I can't say which century this rule was created. Maybe someone will tell me. When was en passant created? Anyone in the chat can tell me. I'd love to know. Um, but yeah, en passant wins the game because the bishop on b7 is hanging at the end. So my opponent resigned. Good game, really. I think it was an interesting game. I'm going to just check really quickly. So this is kind of the theory here. And I went h4. The computer likes e4 more. Or no, they likes h4 too. What I did not know, I think you can't allow h5 cleanly or so conveniently. And Queen a5 seems to me to be the wrong choice because you allow h5 in a way where you have to defend in a weird way. So this pawn doesn't matter so much, and yeah, I got the two bishops, have more space, and it just wasn't worth it to grab that one. So better immo would have been to play knight f6, and after h5 you could play rook g8, and you can move away from the H file, but you control the E4 square. You don't move your queen 3 or 4 times around the opening, and you get a better shot. So get your pieces out. Don't move your queen too much, and then usually things are okay. I hear people saying Stockfish is fine with queen a5, but it's queen a5 in conjunction with taking on c3 that can't be it. And yeah, queen takes c3 is it spikes a little bit. So. All right. Anyways, on to the next. Ben, we can give me the next challenger. All right, Ard chess. What's going on? All right, c4. Okay, I'll go e6. and d5. Okay, e3. So we have a little bit of a queen's gambit situation here. Interesting. I'm going to go a6. What you know about a6? All right, so a6 really is a move that sometimes threatens d takes e5, d takes e4, and b5. So white released the tension and took on d5 right away. I think that's a little bit of a mistake because you released the tension in the center, and I get what I wanted, which is a Carlsbad structure. You can Google that, Carlsbad structure, but essentially it's a position where usually black has a king side, sorry, queen side pawn majority, and white has a king side pawn majority, and the contour, the battle lines are drawn, if you will. All right, so I'm gonna go bishop g4. Pinning is very reasonable. I'm g4 is an idea, but I'm not so worried about that. All right, knight bd7. Knight bd7 might have actually been a little bit careless because g4, g5 did win a pawn on d5. You would have had to advance your pawn, kingside pawns a little bit too much. But I'm going to take away that possibility now with c6. You might say, why not c5? Well, after c5, white could go d4 and kind of play against my hanging pawns. And I don't want the potential of Isolani in the structure with the rook bearing down on the half-open file. So you put on c6 so the rook isn't bearing down on anything. This is well defended with the pawn on b7. So my next few moves probably rook e8, queen e7, connecting my rooks. We talk about how important that is. And I have pretty good central control, so I'm very curious to see what white is going to try and do. Um, but yeah, we'll see. So d3, okay, okay. Maybe trying to play for e4. My bishop is unprotected right now. Um, so maybe e4 actually has some merit because it would be loose. Should I protect it? Maybe I should. If I go queen e7, though, I don't love knight d4. Hmm. Yeah, I'm going to go queen e7 anyway. No, actually, am I? Because queen e7, e4, the captures happen, and then I still can't take because my bishop on d6 is loose. My bishop is loose, folks. That's a problem. Maybe knight e5. Bishop, knight takes e5, bishop takes e2, but then there's knight takes c6. That's a little tactic on my queen. Oh, I gotta make a decision, though. Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna go queen e7. When in doubt, connect your rooks, folks. All right, so knight d4 is played. I did see knight f5 is an issue. Um, I'm gonna take on e2 first, and then we'll see. Um, yeah, queen e5 is an idea threatening mate. f4 is a tempo gainer, though. Um, hmm, it's a tough decision, actually. I'm gonna go bishop e5, looking at the knight like that. Um, it is annoying this knight on coming to on d4. It's looking at the f5 square. I didn't really want to go g6 and soften up my diagonal, so I'm just gonna chill for a little bit. But I am getting under a minute, so I'm gonna start moving quickly and explaining a little bit less. Um, okay. Hmm. Yeah, I'll go rook e8. They can have my bishop. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Knight. Yep, knight to a4 is a little bit annoying. Knight c5 is a little bit. I'm gonna go knight d7. Is there increment? I don't remember. I don't know if there's increment or not. Let me check. I'm gonna move quickly on my next move and check. Hmm. Oh, there is. I think there is increment. I think I gained a second just now. More trades. We're okay with that. I like my position. I have central control still. I have my rooks connected. I need to make an escape square. I need to play a little bit against the d3 pawn, a little bit. I would ideally love to force this pawn to d4, and then I get more light squares. So I just need to tickle the d5 square a little bit. So I'm going to go queen, or the d3, so I'm going to go queen f5. Again, looking at the d3 pawn, this is what this idea is about. Just asking, what are you doing? How are you taking the temperature? And now h5, again, taking a few more light squares, now controlling g4, giving my king an escape square. Again, just grabbing a few more light squares, really important. Again, I have the space, I have the light square control. It's all about the light squares here, all about the light squares that I can play around. So that's what we're doing. What is White's active plan going to be? It's tough. It's really tough. White's really just chilling on this. So b4, okay, b5 is knight. Now more light squares, playing knight h4, looking at f3, looking at g2, more light square business. I'm in the business of controlling the light squares, folks. That's the business I'm in. All right, king h2, more light squares, rook e6. Now the idea is to swing this rook, maybe double this one. It's all about the light square play. If you play g3, you weaken even more light squares. I can come in on f3. So you could see that there's a storm cloud brewing here on the king side. And yeah, I'm already seeing some really interesting ideas. So, all right, so all right, so now rook g6. Should I do that? No, I'm gonna double my rooks first. And then I'm gonna go rook g6. All right, so have I gotten anything out of this? Not yet. Okay, so rook h6 maybe? Can I take that pawn? And close shop my I've trapped my rook, which is not ideal, but I did close shop on the counterplay. And a trap rook might not be a trap rook forever, but you can see how he curled into a ball because of my light square play. And that's important. Now my rook's going to dig itself back out. I'm going to give a check here. I don't want to trade the queens on their terms. I want to trade on my terms. And now my rook is swinging around back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. All right, so rook g3, knight g5. Look at the knight even coming in, being a bit of a hero. Ooh, I don't like that. Now I'm threatening queen takes g2, and that's mate. That's mate. There you go. Really interesting game, I would say. I think White played the first half of it pretty well. I think basically the position after I gave up my bishop for the knight is probably about equal. What happened from here was what happens when, one side is a little bit passive, because I told you it was all about those light squares. So it basically became about playing along this complex, and you could see systematically how that happened. The queen stepped up to e6, right? Light squares. Then I tried to control the squares around me so that their queen couldn't come to g4 easily because d3 was hanging. Then I played h5, seizing more light squares. White's kind of just chilling on the back, now controlling more light squares, knight h4. And again, if you allow one side to kind of impose their will, get all their pieces in range, eventually something's going to happen. And you can see that's what the buildup was. F4 is a great move by White, it must be said, kind of stopping me in my tracks, but more active moves were needed after that, and it was tough in the time trouble. So, all right, that was a really interesting game. Thank you. Thanks, Electric Catfish. Appreciate it. Definitely go to work. Don't know. We want to keep our jobs here, especially in this economy. And yeah, you can give me a new game, Ben. Um, while we're getting that game queued up, I'm really curious. I have two questions for you. I'll ask the first one, where are people tuned in from? So I'm always curious about that. Like, where are you currently? And I'll start. I'm in Brooklyn in New York. Shout out to Brooklyn. Oh, we got I am in chess. Okay. Czech Republic. Okay. Bushwick. Okay. I think I know the Bushwick baby. Shout out to Bushwick. Italy. Okay. Okay. All right. So any requests, by the way? Norway. Cool. We got some nice representation here. Any recommendations before I make a move? All right. I'm gonna make a move because it's going. My clock's dwindling, so I'm gonna play B3. Um. Uh. Hey, Kassa. All right. Smoking. Does it affect my chess career? I say it would, just because I think if you're aiming to get to 2300, maybe it wouldn't affect it so much. But the higher up you go, the harder is going to be to play at a really high level while impaired in any type of way. And obviously, like if you're drinking or smoking and all these things, they're not the same. I'm not making that argument. Let's not get that twisted. But it's not if chess does have sporting qualities, and no sporting individual is going to argue that they're at their best under those circumstances. So let's be real about that. If I played, basketball pretty high level, it would be unthinkable to kind of engage in substances when you need to be at your peak, you need to be in peak performance, right? So that's that. Okay, so I played B3. Shout out to my Danish brethren, Bent Larsen. It's not the best line, but it's not terrible. It a lot of times when they play in the way Black is playing here, which has been good so far, it winds up being like a little bit of a Scheveningen structure. So I'm gonna put all my pawns, basically on the third rank like this. It's kind of like it's a Scheveningen is like the name of the Sicilian opening, or another name to describe it is the hedgehog. And It's called the hedgehog, I think, because there's a bunch of porcupiney or hedgehoggy spikes controlling the squares in the center. So that's the vibe there. And yeah, we're gonna try and make that work. I'm gonna play knight bd2, queen c2, bishop e2. Ooh, whoa, I almost pre-moved by mistake. That was not my intention. All right, so bishop e2 makes sense. Maybe rook c1. And again, Black has a very fine position here. If I had to argue, I would argue that Black is slightly better because of the space. I don't know about Bishop D6 though. I don't know about that. What did that serve? Because Black needs to get the pawn storm going, and I don't know why Bishop D6 is helpful. Or Queen E7. These are moves that I'm not feeling. I'm not feeling. Now, I could go B4, but one of the things you sometimes have to be a little leery of is the piece sacrifice on B4. And they're not strictly, the end of the world, but here I'm not sure. So I don't want to jump in right away. So I'm going to castle first. I'm going to castle. Because sometimes they tack stack on b4 with the bishop, then they bring the knight to b4, and then the knight and the rook combine on the d3 pawn. And if they get three pawns for the piece and some initiative, sometimes it's a bit scary. So g5, I saw that. And my idea was going to move this knight from d2 to e4 or c4 so the other knight can replace it and not be on h4 when it's attacked. So the question is whether you go to c4, e4. I think e4 is better. And the reason I think it's better is because I want to just eye this bishop. So if g4, I have knight d2, and everything is gravy. I don't love my queen being lined up against this rook, though. I also have exchange sacrifices. I already could have considered it, but I didn't want to be too cheeky. But the exchange sacrifice is nice because it rips open the black queen side, and the king shelter feels a little bit more questionable when you do that. If Oh, hold on. How long was A3 hanging? Wait, I need to go back. Was A3 Oh, that was the point of Queen E7. Was A3's hanging? All right, so I should have played B4. I should have played B4. All right, so that's a huge pawn lost, honestly. A huge pawn, and there isn't a darn thing I can do about it. I'm going to take on A3, but that is a huge pawn loss, and I'm going to go knight C5. The knight is well positioned on C5, but Black is doing well now, for sure. I mean, that's a critical pawn. Now both knights have the outpost, the B4 square, and that was just a blunder by me, must be said. Now, this knight on C5 is a nice attacking piece, but it's not, it doesn't make up for that pawn that I lost. All right, so how do I gotta find some way to confuse now because knight b4 is coming. I need to get some, I need some initiative here. Um, I think knight d2 is a good start. I connecting my rooks, trading potentially this bishop on e2, and the light squares are a little bit exposed here once the bishop on g4 is gone. It might be a little bit like the last game. Remember I was saying the light squares, the light squares, the light squares? These light squares are a little bit vulnerable, so I'm always going to be alert to some of those sensitive color complexes, and now queen g4 might be a little something something. Now again, if black consolidates, maybe the knight comes to b4 one day, it attacks d3, very different story, but I think it's not gonna be easy to do that, actually, because this knight on c5 is hard to shake. If you play b6, the knight on c6 is loose. So I think I've created enough confusion where I feel okay now. But the a3 pawn was for sure a blunder. For sure, for sure, for sure. So, and the clock is dwindling here. All right, queen b2. One of the issues, by the way, with the knight to b4 is knight c4 actually trapped the queens, shockingly. Like I wasn't even planning that, but it did track there. All right, so queen b2 pins me, but I have this queen g4 check, and I think that's important to unpin. And now I'm trying to think, there's so many interesting ways, like knight a6 might be a nice move at some point. I think I just need to start with knight c4, though, attacking the queen on b2. And you know what's crazy? You know what's actually crazy? This queen, this trap. The queen can only go to a2, but then I have rook a1, and the knights control all of the squares in the a file. So shockingly, in this position, this is a winning position. Then the queen is actually trapped here, and I didn't, that wasn't intentional, folks, but I need to go back just for a moment because yeah, this position is already pretty good for black. G5, G4 was, I mean, it's like almost winning for black was the way to go. The bishop moves kind of hurt a little bit. But queen e7, I was supposed to go b4 and not be afraid of the sacrifice that I was a little bit afraid of. I was supposed to go b4, allow the sacrifice and be like, no big deal. Um, Instead, I castled, and I just didn't see the a3 pawn was hanging. Neither did my opponent. But once that pawn was captured, I really have to kind of clock in an overdrive. And it's funny, I played knight c5. The best move here is rook takes c6. And it goes to show you again how this exchange sacrifice is really nice if it rips open the pawn structure. It's usually a pretty good thing. I missed that, and it really turned with this queen b2 move, actually, because I get my queen to g4, and then I trap the queen. So interesting game for sure. And yeah, very, very good game, Tineric. I think if you had more time, you would have, posed even more problems. So shout out to you. All right, let's get to the next one. All right, Arno, what's going on? I played b3, I played c4. Let's try to get something on the left side of the board going. I'll play e4, or sorry, the right side of the board. I don't know left from right today. So see, Sicilian, I'm going to play knight f3. I'm going to give the people what they want. No Rossalimo Sicilians today, even though uh, you might see a Rossalimo in the World Championship match if black is in a must-win situation. All right, so d6. Normally when there's a pawn duo in the center, you have to try and get rid of it sooner rather than later, and taking on d4 is a must. The reason for that is because I get to kick you around a little bit, particularly if you have a knight already on one of the central squares, I can kick it. The question here is whether I should go d5 and attack the knight and kick it back to b8, or whether I should take on c5 and argue and take away your castling rights or force the knight back to d8. I think both are really good. I think slightly better is probably d5, just taking the space. I don't know that for sure, but I think so. I love space. I think the stronger you become, the more you realize space is such a huge asset. Um, it's something for sure. Like I think some people like to play against space, some people like to have space, but space is a really significant thing. All right, 95. I'm going to take that. I like doubling those pawns, and I'm going to go bishop e2. What's not to like? I have a huge central control. I have king safety. My king's castled. And I'm going to play c4 and then bring my knight to c3 and take as much space as possible. So, and then bishop e3 to attack c5. And the double pawns aren't like the end of the world. It's more so that the space is the big deal. Because black can definitely maybe undouble the pawns at some point with e6. Maybe in some positions I get d6. The real issue is that with the space, I'm going to be faster with trying to blast open the queen side. And bishop g4, no. I have two attackers here, so I got to take that one. I got to take that one. Uh, really important would have been to play b6 and defend the c5 pawn, but giving me that piece, I have to take it. And yeah, it's going to be hard now. The other thing about the double pawns like this is that this bishop is not is kind of obstructed, so that's another issue. Queen b6, I can go knight a4. I'm going to go b3 first. Actually, no, I'm going to go rook b1. Am I going to go b3 first? I could go knight a4. I don't like to be greedy when I'm already up material. You should know that about me. If we're in a relationship, you need to know I'm not greedy when I'm up material. All right, so rook b1. The idea is now to go b4 and play against this pin here. So that's the idea. But I'm a piece up. There's so many ways you could do this. You could argue to just take another pawn and so on. I kind of like to play with control, so I have no problem retreating. I have no problem consolidating, and that's what's happening right now. So b4 is a nice move. I prepare with rook b1, taking advantage of that pin. And that's the vibe. All right, so I need to know. I need to know. Your boy needs to know. The World Championship match is coming up soon. World champion Ding Liren is going to be playing the challenger Gukesh, the Indian prodigy, yada yada yada. Who do you guys think's going to win? How are you thinking about it? If you think Ding is going to win, say Ding in chat. If you think Gukesh is going to win, say Gukesh in chat. I just need to know where y'all stand. I need to know. I need to know. So I'm seeing Gukesh right now. I've not seen any Ding. Um, I get it. I get it. Um, but yeah, I mean, does anyone think Ding's gonna win? Gukesh, Gukesh, Gukesh. Man, is everyone an Indian fan or they're just being realistic? Are they just being realistic? I need to know. Um, all right, I'm being very greedy, but I have a lot of pressure on the king here, so that's what's going on. I'm drawing arrows with where the pressure is. I have d6 check potentially. My rook's bearing down. Gukesh is on fire. Gukesh, so it's actually funny. Like, I think it's going to be interesting how people respond if Ding wins, because it'd be a pretty interesting. I don't know if you even want to call it redemption story because he is the world champion, but like, it's like he was down and out the first time, and now this time, it's interesting. It's just interesting, but look, it's really hard when you're in a slump to get out of it. And chess is one of those things where you really do have to stay in shape and good playing shape and so on. Like it's hard to be gone for a while and just show up and be successful. And it's another thing why chess does have a number of sporting elements to it is because you really do have to be very updated with your knowledge and preparation and all that jazz. All right, I'm gonna double my rooks. I have all the time in the world here. Maybe go c6. Um, maybe I should I'm actually, man, I'll take on f7 and go rook b7 if allowed. That's the smoothest way. Um, okay, all right, so no one said Ding, just to be clear, no one said Ding is gonna win. So we got 0 Ding people in the chat. That's crazy work. Crazy work. All right, so I could recapture on e4, but more salient is the pressure that this pin provides. So that's what I'm trying to work right now. The queen and the rook bearing down in f7. And I don't even need this queen because checkmate is more valuable. So I'm going to go for the checkmate. All right, good game, Arno. You got out of the breaks reasonably with knight f3, knight c6. But after d4, you got to make that trade in the center. Don't allow me to maintain a super center or two pawns to the center. Some people call it a super center. And definitely really be careful when you're putting pieces on certain squares, whether they're covered or not. You did have a defender, but I had two attackers, and that was too much. So those were the vibes. A piece up is tough to overcome. So yeah, but good game. Wow. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Thanks for the heads up. All right. So Team Kobe for life. I was gonna try to play the Sicilian like my opponent just did. So C3 Sicilian. I'm gonna go D5. You can go D5 or Knight F6. Those are the two reasonable ways to handle this. I think D5 is a little bit easier to play, if I'm being honest with folks. Um, so that's why I'm doing it this way. Now, White's probably going to go D4. No, okay, never mind. I stand corrected. I'm going to go Knight C6. Normally you're supposed to go D4. Hmm. I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna try and punish it in any way. I'm just gonna go E6. What I was gonna say is the rule of thumb in the C3 Sicilians in terms of with black always has a decision when to take on D4, when not to take on D4, and usually it comes down to whether white can go C4 and then D5. But the rule of thumb is usually they can't do that if Queen E4 check is there. Now that the king is castled and that Bishop E2 is played, I actually need to take on D4. So I'm gonna take right now. It's the right time and then go bishop e7 if they take with the pawn. Um, and I know knight takes d4, so I got to take this knight. And the reason is I want to give white an isolated pawn and play against that. So that's what we're doing now. And now bishop e7, and I want to castle and play against the IQP. Knight c3. I think queen d. Normally, I like to go back to d8, but d6 is also an option. It's really like queen d8 or queen d6. Queen d7 is a huge blunder because of bishop b5. So it's a question of where you want the queen to go. Queen d6 is a little bit more aggressive. It allows knight b5, but then there is queen b8. So I'm going to go d6. I think it's okay here. I don't see a huge issue with knight b5. And the other thing that's important is the reason queen d6 is a little bit better than queen d8, besides not being on the back rank, so getting a piece off the back rank, is it's this idea with bishop f4 that you try to stop bishop f4. Now, g3 does mean that bishop f4 can happen, but you always got to ask at what cost. And now the cost of g3 is you weaken the squares to the left and right of that pawn, and that is a cost. That is a cost. So we'll see where that goes. So all right, so bishop f4, queen d7, or queen d8 is like another question. Hmm. I'm gonna go queen d8. It's modest, but I don't think it's terrible. And I want to get rid of this bishop. Again, I don't love my queen being on the back ring. Let's be clear. I just didn't like queen d7 because of bishop b5. I don't know. I just didn't like that. Although maybe that was good to force the bishop to b5 and then go queen d8. I have my own idea. My own idea is to play bishop d6 and try to initiate a few trades, play against IQP. White does have no serious problems, so this has been a good game by White so far. All right, I can also go bishop d7 here. And I'm going to do that. I didn't think I'd have that opportunity because I thought white would have played bishop f3 and hit b7. Um, but now that rook c1 was played, I think it's an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Queen d3, bishop c6, and this is the dream. The dream is now I have firm control over the square in front of the isolated pawn, which means it's really difficult to push. And then I just try to massage that square by initiating trades. So that's what I'm going to try to do, actually. So how do we start? Step one, knight d5. Let's uh let's initiate some trade, shall we? And control the square. Why not? Um all right, so a3 is not a great move because I can take on f4 and weaken the structure. Um so I'm gonna do that. Now I do lose control of d5 by doing that, but I think it's more valuable now that the king is so open that I could have taken on f4 is fun. Now step two, attack f4. And also invite my queen over to some of the business squares on the king side. So queen g3 defends. Now I can go queen f6 putting more pressure on f4, connecting my rooks finally. And you can see these bishops are really bearing down on the white king side. So there's a lot to like here, a lot of pressure, lots of pressure. So and yeah, it's you can't really defend f4, so it's hard. It's hard. And yeah, bishop f3 doesn't defend f4, but I gotta snack that up. And now you can see there's also a fork on c1 and g3. Now again, white is making, there have been some mistakes here, obviously, to get to this point, but it all kind of helped once the structure was clarified, and that IQP really did give me something to play against, and it's been hard to maneuver around it. All right, so yeah, now I'm gonna take on c1, and now I'm gonna take on f3. So now I'm gonna be up a full rook there, and now I got to get my this rook in the game and maybe transfer it to the king side. Notice this bishop is really controlling all of the knight's jumping squares. If a bishop is three, or if a piece is 3 squares away horizontally from a knight, it usually controls its jumping squares forward if it's a pawn, a bishop, or a queen. So that's actually good geometry to be aware of. All right, so let me go h5. h5, h4 is not a bad idea. Um, This is a little bit careless. I could have gone rook d5 and transferred that way. I didn't see rook c1, so now I gotta back up here. Not allow rook takes f3. A little careless on my part, but nothing that fundamentally changes the story. Just takes a little bit more time to finish. So, um, all right. How close are you to GM? I actually haven't been an active player for a little while, to be honest. I just have had other priorities at the moment. I do have 2 GM norms, but I'm old now. Like in the chess world, I'm old. I'm 31 years old. I have a lot of other priorities. Obviously, I have a full-time job. This is, a few hours I get to talk about chess with you, but really, working at chess.com is not like playing chess. It's a lot of other things as far as my responsibility entails. So, so yeah, it's something where it was a real priority for me for a long time in my life, and now it's less so, candidly. All right, so queen g5 is a check, and then queen g2 is another check, and then king e1, queen g1 is not checkmate because the queen can block, but there's this nice deflection tactic, rook d1. So that's that. And now I win the queen. More checks ensue. More checks ensue. I do see the knight on a5 is hanging, but I didn't know if I had to take it. So I'm giving more checks first. And now I'm going to take the knight. Now I'm going to take the knight. Look, BJH, we know it. You know it's true. In chess terms, I am old as heck. Queen a5 is a checkmate threat. There you go. All right, so yeah, so really yeah, really interesting game. I think, the opening again was pretty reasonable. One thing I would say is, with an IQP, you want an isolated queen pawn. Or isolated pawn in general. You want to keep more pieces on the board. So after d4, c takes d4, it's really better to take with the pawn because you keep another set of knights on the board. The more pieces you have on the board when you have the IQP, the isolated pawn, the better. The the less pieces are on the board for the side playing against the isolated pawn, the better for that side. So I want to trade pieces, you don't. That is a good rule to keep in mind as you navigate these positions. All right, so good game, and yeah, let's have fun with it. Is this am I now playing Chess Nerd? Was that the heads up I got before? All right, so d4, d5. Oh, a London system. Okay, so I'm gonna go c5 and knight c6. This has been seen 1,000,001 times before. I apologize in advance for my lack of originality here. And knight f6. This is all London-ish things. And I'm gonna go knight h5. I'm really gonna try to snag that bishop. And that bishop means a lot to me. It means more, it means the world to me. So yeah, I got that bishop pair. It means a lot. I like that. Um, Yeah, what's not to like? Now white does have an open H file to work with, but I have my own trumps too. I have my own trumps too. All right, so bishop d7, just developing, keeping the tension, yada yada. Bishop e2. Okay. Hmm. What to do? It's really a question of where I want what I want to do with the bishop on f8. Do I want to fianchetto it or do I want to bring it to e7? Both are okay. I'm going to bring it to e7 in this case and maintain a little bit of flexibility. I want to see what white does with their king, and that's a huge part of the story. If white castles king side, or sorry, queen side, then I might want to do some and have some attack. c4 is a very aggressive move. I'm going to take on d4. I don't agree with c4. It loosens the structure a little bit. I think the d4 pawn might be a target in the near future. Yes, it takes d4. I think it's a good time to take on b3. And the problem is normally this is not actually good for white, the tension on b3 and b6, but it's just defending this pawn on d4 now is not an easy task. My bishop and knight are both putting pressure on it. You can't support it with the rook. It's just not easy. It's not easy go of it right now. And that pawn falls. It's just not great. The other thing about this position is I remember I said the three squares away from a knight, horizontal or vertical, controls the knight. Look at this pawn controlling the jumping squares of the knight going forward. Again, I'm trying to explain to you, this is a very important concept. I didn't even have this in my mind really until I was already a master. But it's very important to understand when you're three squares away, you have a lot of control that night, and that's it. That means something. All right, so do I want to take the pawn or not? If I take a few times, they do have bishop f3 at the end. Um, I think I'm okay with that, but I just need to kind of make sure. Um, I can also castle and then wait on taking the pawn, but there might be cost to that as well. Ugh, decisions, man, they're tough. Tough decisions. What do I do? Actually, if castles, there's bishop b5, and then I can't take the pawn, so I should probably take the pawn. Yeah, I'm going to take the pawn. What am I saying? I'm taking the pawn. I have a nice bishop on a diagonal. I'm attacking b2. Yeah, I have a pawn. Like, why am I tripping? All right, rook b1, bishop f5 is another tempo on the rook on b1. I like that. I like that. But I do allow bishop b5 check. I don't like that. So you know what? I'm gonna castle first. Modesty is the best policy here. Just chilling. And they're attacking d5. I could play bishop f5, trade the center pawn for the b2 pawn, but this rook on b1 is so passive. I don't really want to help. I don't want to help out white and free this rook. So I'm going to defend the d5 pawn, which definitely is more valuable than b2. This knight now is trying to get to b3. I respect that. I'm going to go rook c8. And if knight b3, I'm going to go bishop b6. And again, you're going to see the three squares away from the knight dynamic with the bishop on b6. And also my rook can potentially enter on c2. So you're seeing a lot of the geometry that I talk about, right? With the three squares away, the rook coming in. Like I'm not calculating. I'm really not. It's a lot. It's not deep calculation, I should say. I guess I'm considering some things. But my point is it's all about just establishing control in different ways. All right, so I'm going to get my rook to c2, hitting the b2 pawn. And the bishop also bears down on f2. So very, very strong bishop on b6. I'm willing to now trade the d5 pawn for the b2 pawn because I'm getting more. I'm getting some interest. All right, so bishop a5. Or sorry, knight a5. Oh, bishop a, is that a Freudian slip? Bishop a5. Um, yeah, I'm taking on b2. I'm doing that. They take on b7. They can have that one. Got that one. And I'm going to keep this nice central pawn with d4. And my bishop is great. I am blocking it temporarily, but I'm hoping that it won't be a forever thing. And I'm using my bishops to kind of take up more space, carve out more real estate. You know the vibes. All right, so all right, so I'm gonna go g6 here. What's the saying? It's never too late to say I'm sorry or say a goodbye or whatever. It's never too late to make an escape square. It is too late sometimes, but definitely make that escape square. Why did I make it on a dark square, you may ask? Why not H6? Well, the rule of thumb that's really helpful is you make an escape square on the opposite color of their bishop, your opponent's bishop. So they have a light square bishop, that means a dark square escape square. Simply that. If you remember that, you are Gucci. All right, I don't want to give up that bishop. I'm going bishop b3, and I got to talk a little bit less given the time situation. We're trading, and now I'm attacking, and now d3. d2 is a threat, and you can see the bishops are doing work right now. They are really doing work. All right, I need bishop to the central square, d4, bishop b2 maybe. The knight's trying to control the square. And I should be okay here. Bishop b2 is a nice move. This rook is caught in the fire, caught in the crossfire. And yeah, this is all right. This is all right. Rook takes c2 doesn't change the story. Even from far away, the bishop is controlling this check. So you can see the value of the bishop is a long range piece as well. And I do not hide my bias of bishops being better than knights. I do not even hide it at all. Really, to me, a bishop is 3.5 and a knight is 3.25, honestly. All right, good game, Jake. Good game. Where did it turn? I think it turned. Well, I think the first thing, by the way, is when I try to chase the bishop, give me some resistance. Don't give it to me right away. And you can give me resistance by going bishop e5. Here, if I take, it's actually not great because there are two problems. One usually is d takes e5 and the knight sometimes is trapped. But the problem here is after knight takes e5, bishop b5 actually threatens to win my queen because I have to block with the bishop and then all that. So it's just not a good situation if I take like that. So black usually has to play f6, and that's not a nice move to play. Then you go back, but the difference in the story here is that you made me go f6. So make me work to get that bishop. Same thing here. You can go bishop g5. And usually they go h6 and g5 here. And yeah, I get the bishop, but man, you made me work to get the bishop, you know? So make me work. That's the first thing I'd say with the bishop. The second thing is, and the way it transpired, is when one side does have the bishop pair, really don't rush to open the position. Get the rest of your pieces in the game, because you playing c4 made it so that all of a sudden my bishop could really assert itself. So normally your London chain, the London pawn structure, at least fends off my dark square bishop because it's a chain that's on the dark squares and makes it hard to maneuver. So consider those things, and you'll definitely be better off. So, but good game. All right, uh, let's get another one up. All right, 3D Pearl Plot. Welcome. I'm gonna play knight f3. D5. Let's play d4. I promise I won't play a London system. I promise. I promise. I promise. Just believe me. All right, c4. We got a Queen's Gambit declined. The Queen's Gambit declined. All right, I'm gonna play knight c3. There's a good chance we're gonna see a Queen's Gambit decline in the World Championship match. It is truly one of the most solid openings in chess, probably the most. Um, e3, and yep, this has all been played before. c5. Let's see how much my opponent knows. E takes d5. That's different. That's different. Normally, actually, no, it's not. That's fine. Am I supposed to take though? Or am I? I mean, I don't think I'm supposed to. I think I can take and play against the IQP, but there's a lot of theory there that I don't want to debate today. So I'm gonna go bishop e2. It's a relatively modest move, but I don't want to have a theory debate. I'm not into that right now, or really ever, to be honest. Basically, I'm playing against the hanging pawns for a little while, and I'm biding my time. Bishop f5 is a nice move, and I think now I might take, actually. Right? Shouldn't I take now? Yeah, I'm going to take now. And the idea with taking now is I think I can get some pressure on the bishop on c5. d4 is the move you kind of want to play sometimes, but now I have knight a4 hitting the the bishop on c5, and so I'd actually win a pawn. You wouldn't be able to get in the trade that you're looking for. So bishop b6 is played, and now knight a4 anyway, and I'm hitting the bishop, but I'm really indirectly stopping d4. That's the whole point. And if I get the bishop pair, that's nice, but it's really playing against the IQP. It's very similar to the queen's gambit position we were talking about a little bit earlier in this show. All right, I could take the bishop. I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, it could go somewhere, but I don't think it is. But is it going somewhere? If I take, I also don't like that I bring the queen to an active square. I'm not a fan of that. So I'm going to actually pin. I'm going to go bishop g5 and pin this knight because that's annoying. And basically with that pin, I ask, are you going to double your pawns if I take? Are you gonna take with the queen and allow that? There's a lot now that the queen feels overworked to me. It's looking at b6, it looks at f6. It feels suspect. So that's kind of the vibe. All right, bishop e4. So defending the pawn, respect. Um, a little bit artificial, but it's an idea. It is an idea. Um, and now I have a decision to make. I could go back actually, which is really counterintuitive, but I'd be attacking the e4 bishop. And it's kind of looking like a vibe, actually. It's kind of a vibe. Or it can just be normal and take the bishop. I'm gonna do that. Uh, you don't need to finesse so much. And now knight d4. Again, playing against Isolani, I still have this pin that I'm working with. I like my position. I must be said. I got a really nice control. Also, if the knight on c6 was rook takes c8, again, might double the pawns. So I'm just going to keep the pin. That's what we're doing here. I mean, you could break the pin, but then the king becomes weaker. So you don't feel great about that. Um, and yeah, I haven't connected my rooks yet. I know I preached that a lot, but look, they did it for me. So I can take with the queen. By the way, really quickly, I did want it to take on c8, but if I took on c8 here, it'd be a huge blunder because knight takes e2 is a check. So that would be a nice uh in-between move, Zwischenzug, as they say, or intermezzo, actually. By the way, there's a book out called Intermezzo. Has anyone read it? Do people still read books? I think there's some chess related dynamics in the book. That's why I'm asking. It's called Intermezzo. Um, I haven't read it, but I'm just asking. I actually right now I'm reading two books, but the one that I'm really focused on right now is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Really good book, actually. Crazy plot line, but really good book so far. I've enjoyed it. Um, I'm actually might start me a book club, honestly. Anyone want to be a part of my book club for real? Like I actually think I am gonna start one. Like just because like it's just interesting to kind of like talk about stuff. So yeah, if you're interested in maybe joining my potential book club, definitely hit me up in the DMs and on Instagram because I low key might make one. Um all right, so I have the bishop pair. I have a better pawn structure. I want to win material. So f3 wins me a pawn because the bishop has to move and I take the pawn on d5. Um, and I like that. I like that. I am weakening my king a little bit. Like, I do understand the don't play f6 school of thought. It's a good school. They just like Hogwarts, they have a lot of students. There is some wizardry there as well. And to be honest, there are so many games where you push the F pawn and you do lose. Now, the difference here is, my thinking is the following. One, there's no dark square bishop. They have no dark square bishop. I'm weakening a dark square, but they have no dark square bishop. So I feel better about that decision. The other thing is the central pawn. It's pretty valuable. And the third thing is their king is hella weak too. Their king looks exposed, man. Their king looks like their king looks like it got rained out, like it got rained on or something. All right, anyway, so bishop a2. I think I like this pin looking at the knight on d7. And maybe can I spring my bishop around to c3 and have a nice battery? Maybe. But also, this pin is devastating because now I can go bishop b5, right? And then add more pressure to the pin piece. And I think I might be winning a piece. I also might be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, but I might be winning a piece because the queen can't go to c7. And if it goes to e7, yeah, I saw that. I'm going to go bishop d6. That's the savvy idea. Yeah, they pre-move rook d8 thinking I would take here and I'd be pinned. But I saw bishop d6, which actually wins the queen first, or the exchange. So that's the ball game. Very, very, very interesting move. Oh, sorry, interesting move, interesting game. This is normal chess, actually, the queen's gambit positions. I think here, again, you probably want to take with the knight so you don't give yourself the isolated pawn. That's a very important idea. And so my c takes d5 is a little bit premature, but it's so important you take with the knight to not give yourself the IQP. And if I take again, you take with the queen. Because what happened is the position with the IQP is really unpleasant. It's really unpleasant. And I kind of systematically you're kind of twisted in a pretzel trying to justify defending the pawn. Like so many moves were about defending the pawn, right? Bishop b4 just trying to defend the pawn. H6 was about trying to break the pin. And eventually, here's the crazy thing, the pawn was lost anyway. So you did all that work and the pawn was lost anyway. It's, yeah. All right. You can hit me with another game and I'm going to have my sip of tea while I wait for a moment. And, yeah, we're vibing. It's a vibe. It's a vibe. All right, Rama, what's going on? E4. So what have I played? I played the Sicilian, and I played some Queen's Gambit Decline. So everything else is available to me. So I'll play the French. We'll go to France. Oh, an exchange French. So many people are afraid to play the mainline French. The only move, honestly, and that's of any concern, in my humble opinion, against the French is playing knight c3 on move 3. The Terrace is not much. The French exchange is not much. Um, it's funny where it's almost like I'm giving a lecture on the isolated pawn because this is another position where there's real potential for an isolated pawn, for white to have one. So. All right, so play the Caro-Kann next is being said. All right, we can consider that. That will be taken under consideration. If I get the opportunity, we will see a Caro-Kann at some point. The Terrace is more interesting and more open. It is more open for sure, but objectively, the Knight C3 is the most challenging move against the French. Trust me. Or the advanced French with E5. It's the space type of moves that are a little more challenging. Um, all right, what else are some of if people in the chat, what else are some of your favorite openings? I'd love to know. H3, wow, that's usually you can't get away with playing a move like H3 so early just because you got to have other priorities when in the opening like development. So I'm a little surprised that that's a thing, but maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know. I'm gonna go knight e4 and try to put more pressure on this pinned piece. I was looking at rook e8 check, but there was bishop e3, and I was like, that's not impressive. Hmm. All right, so Sveshnikov, knight c6. What's the knight c6 called? Is that the Nimzovich defense? One knight c6? I'm not sure. The Rui Lopez, the hyper accelerated dragon, the King's Gambit. Wow, we got a wide array of interests here. My goodness. The ready. All right, queen b3. Okay, that makes sense. Putting pressure on this bishop. Hmm. Hmm. I'm going to play c5 and treat this like a Ragozin. It's a weird move, but I just want to blow up the center because I have a lead in development. So why not, you know? Why not open as many lines as possible and wreak havoc here? And then my knight can come to c6 or a6 depending on how White handles it, and this is an extremely dangerous position for white to deal with because, again, I have a lead in development. That should count for something. So bishop d3, okay. Now this is the money moment where it's like if I have something, it's on this move because I basically white's going to cast next move, and then my positions not might not make that much sense. So this is the question: do I have something here? If the answer is no, then there's nothing going on. If the answer is yes, there's something. So what's the move? I don't see anything concrete. I hate that I don't see anything, but I don't. What's the move? What's the move? C takes d4, queen takes b4, knight c6, queen b3. Hmm, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to take on d4 because it looks interesting, but I don't know if this is right. I don't know. It fascinates me. It feels like white did something wrong with the king being exposed like this. Did knight takes d4, and then knight c5 back, maybe? Does that work? Does that make sense, folks? Does that make sense? Knight takes f2 is also fascinating. Ugh, so many things. I'm gonna go bishop c5, maybe? Yeah, I'm gonna go bishop c5, attack this knight on d4, and then it's indirectly attacking f2 as well. There were a lot of interesting options there. We're gonna find out after, but these 30-second things aren't good for my health or anyone's health, really. Mhm. Knight c5 would have been a safer choice just to get the bishop pair. It would have been a safe slight advantage. Um, what I did putting the bishop on c5 is it's strictly more ambitious. Um, I'm gonna take on c6, I guess. Or play knight c6. Trying to make something happen here. I don't think this is working, but it's interesting. And now e3 is loose. Bishop takes e4, bishop takes e3 is the idea. Okay. This way I think I like, because now bishop takes e4, there's queen h4 check. And there's queen h4 check anyway, and so this king is now out in the open, the material's equal. This is dangerous. So now bishop e6, connecting my rooks. These rooks aren't going to be connected for a good while. I like queen g3, eyeing the e3 pawn and keeping this kind of under lock and key. Rook b8, nice tempo. Rook takes b2, another kind of nice move, adding more pressure. Queen takes e3 is a check. That's also more pressure. Get my other rook into the game because that's important. Uh, oh, I just missed a tactic. Rook takes e2. See, my tactics sometimes are not alert enough, but I could have done that on the previous move to unload. The queen was overloaded, and there we have it. That was an interesting game. I think the French exchange, like I said, is not the most challenging. But h3 is a move you really can't afford when you're already behind a little bit in development. So h3 is not great. Wow, it says my knight e4 was good. And it says here, oh, I didn't see this. It says I should play queen e7, which protects the bishop and creates discovery checks. I played c5, which was, wow. After bishop d3, this is a winning position, and I would not have seen this move, but it's kind of cool. Look at this move, b5. Look at this tension of pawns. It's like kind of crazy. Like, but the point is now I'm threatening d takes c4. or b takes c4, and if you take, black could take with check and then play c4. So I actually, that's a really cool looking move, b5. A little bit beyond my human brain. All right, on to the next. Let's see what we got in store. Um, let's see what we got in store. I'm gonna take some. I'm gonna drink some more tea while I'm waiting. By the way, you're allowed to ask questions too. Like if you have questions about the chess world or about, the games or about openings or about World Championship or whatever, like I'm totally down to like answer some questions while I'll do my best to answer questions while, we get this down. Oh, someone did ask questions. Do you coach? Um, I do coach a little bit. I don't have the time as much anymore, so it has to, I mean, a lot of times this has to be really worth my time. Um, but there was a time where I coached a lot. So all right, so I'm still waiting for a pairing here. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back into control and ask what the deal is with these pairings because I don't see one up on my screen. So hold on, I'm going behind the scenes right now, and asking about this. And in the meantime, we'll see what it do. Okay, so behind the scenes, many of the people that challenged are actually not where they're not in the play environment right now. So people are trying to be queued up, but they're not in the play environment. And so you can't get a challenge if you're not in the play environment. So we might have to skip over some people if this persists. But it's all good. It's all good. All right, so we do got Flamin' Chess Dragon. All right. Given the name, if I get the chance, I gotta play a dragon, right? I gotta play it. Like, don't I have to play a dragon? Your name is Flaming Chess Dragon. I gotta play a dragon. So please let me play a dragon. I could have played G6 and then automatically played a dragon. Ah, nope. See, would you look at this? Now I can't play a dragon. Now I cannot play a dragon. This is a shame. Because now when the bishop comes to c4, it's really important that you play e6 to blunt the bishop's diagonal and the pressure on f7. So I can't play a dragon anymore. I just can't do it. Not if I want to get in trouble. So I am trying, by the way. I am trying to win these games. Like I'm not going easy on anyone. I might be a little flimsy in conversion here or there, but I'm trying. And yeah. All right, so D3, I'm gonna put the knight on C6. It's kind of gives it's kind of like a closed Sicilian type of vibe because white didn't play for the D4 move. So what do the kids say these get days? It's giving closed Sicilian. Yeah, it is giving closed Sicilian. I'm taking a little bit more space while I can before allowing E5. So you have A4, B4. I'm just taking more space a la closed Sicilian vibes and putting the bishop on b7. And I love my position. My thing about the closed Sicilian is that white gets an opportunity early on to play d4 and take space, and then they don't do it. And then the irony is most of the game, then white actually is slowly trying to build up to d4, and then it's harder to do. So that's my beef with the closed Sicilian is you basically have the chance to play d4 early on, and then you don't want to do it. It's like some things aren't going to be there forever. Like that's life, right? Not everything is going to be there for you forever. So that's my beef with it. Um, it's kind of like maybe you have this maybe you have some interest, right? You have some like some love interest, some woman you're into or some, man you're into, whoever whatever you're in, whatever, right? And you're like, "Oh, like I like this person, but like I'm not going to say anything. They're just going to be there forever." It's like, "No, they're not. No, they're not." I mean, you got to strike when the iron's hot, man. All right, so speaking of striking while the iron's hot. I don't want to play d5 because e5 is a little bit annoying. I also don't want to play, I don't want to be active, super active right now. So I also want to play h6, but then these sacks kind of scare me a little bit. So what do I do? I don't know what to do. It's annoying. I'm gonna go rook b8. It's weird, but just stay with me. There's an idea. Just stay with me. So they're building up for d4 for sure, but I don't. It's not a threat because the e4 pawn is hanging. So just stay with me. I do have an idea. My idea is that I would love to go knight a5 and b3, and I'm just preparing that. Look at that knight a5. Look at that knight right there. Um, and this I like. This I like. So bishop c4 is interesting, but it doesn't work great because I have knight takes e4 or knight takes c4. I can be fancy. I can be fancy. Should I be fancy? I'm going to take on c4. Let me not be too fancy. I'm going to take on c4, take on e4. That's the pawn. It's a tempo on the queen. What's not to like? Um, so you can see that b4 thing really worked out. That little slow play really worked out. And now I have a bishop pair and a pawn. Let's go. All right, so I don't like my queen here anymore because it's kind of in the line of fire. So I'm going to go queen c7. Bishop is protecting the knight on e4. We're all good there. We are good there, folks. Um, and I might even consider playing e5, which is a move I was not considering at previous points in the game, but because I have so much control, I kind of like that. I mean, again, it's pushing your f pawn, but I like how much space I have. They're trying to trade pieces. Doesn't necessarily. Actually, let me chill out before I play f5. That's crazy work. Let me not do that. Let me go. Let me be more responsible and just take on d2 and just be an adult. Sometimes you just got to be an adult. It's not always about glory. And so being an adult means just, doing the responsible thing, win a pawn, be an adult, trade pieces, and don't play f5. So you just need to be an adult. So I'm basically adulting right now. Knight f4 defends the mate, but at what cost though? That's a really wild move. But I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take that pawn. And I'm gonna go back. It's a little hit and run, actually. Hit it, hit the pawn, took the pawn and ran. No shame. No shame in my game. All right, so now I'd love to go e5, but the knight coming to d5, it would not make me happy at all. It just shut down all the play. So I need to lift the knight off the board without going crazy. I could have maybe gone g5 on the previous move to do that. I just didn't want to touch my king. Like it made me wildly uncomfortable to play g5 to win the piece, and I didn't want to assume that type of like risk. So I'm 2 pawns up. I'm doing it in the boring way. Like there's no need to be super fancy or crazy with the conversion. Like no one asked for that. No one asked for that. All right, let me go a5. Let me go a4. I don't know what the knight moves are doing though. You gotta tell me. Oh, a3. Look at that pawn. That's a pass pawn, folks. That is a pass pawn. Now bishop f6, bishop c3, or a2. This pawn is marching down the yellow brick road. And yeah, I'm not allowing that bishop to be captured. This knight is kind of scary looking on f6. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I could have queen, but not yet. I want to just get my a last piece in the game. It's so important for me to get my piece in the game. I do not care about material. If I'm already up material, I do not need more. I'm not greedy. I'm not greedy except when I am. And yeah, now I'm taking that queen. Whoa. This is a everything must go sale. Everything must go. Everything must go. It's a everything must go sale. Queen takes F3 is in the everything must go category. Like I said, everything must go. And now G5 is checkmate. Who likes pawn mates? I like pawn mates. Um, Yeah, really, it was an interesting game for a long time. I would say that obviously the time trouble, things can kind of go crazy. But again, I maintain that you have this opportunity to play D4 on move two, and then you fight your whole life to play D4, and it never happens. And I think that happens in so many close Sicilians. One of the other things is usually in the close Sicilian, you want to try and stop the queenside expansion. So when I go A6, just as an automatic thing, go A4 because you just stop me from going B5. So whenever you see A6 and you're playing close Sicilian, go A4, slow it down at least because basically I took up so much space and you never got a pawn break in. It was always a little bit of maneuvering, and that hurt you. So, but good game, and yeah, we'll on to the next. All right. So what haven't I played? So I played B3, I played C4, I played knight F3, I played E4. I haven't gone D4 yet. So we'll go D4. The Grob. The Grob. Wow, if you want me to play the Grob is crazy work. Crazy work. Crazy work. Why the Grob? All right, knight C3. I think the Grob is actually maybe the worst starting move. I'm not sure, but it might be. We have another Queen's Gambit. Told you this is popular. And I'm playing knight c3, knight f3, which really means black gets to choose the variation. Knight c6 is the semi-Slav. Bishop b4 would have been Rogozin. c5 was the Teresh. Knight c6 is, I don't know what that's called, but it's not great. And the reason is, in queen's pawn openings, you don't want to put your knight in front of the c pawn. It generally just blocks things up, basically. Normally, your knight wants to be behind. Normally, the c pawn is important to engage the center. So you see, that's why this is not ideal. So this knight c6, not ideal. Um, not losing, but not ideal. Okay, so b6, that's also not ideal because now the knight is loose. So now I'm scared for you. So I'm going to take on d5 and go bishop b5 and try to play against that wayward knight, basically, the unprotected knight. So knight d5, yep, that's a move. I'm going to trade on e7 first because it was hanging. Um, And I love, okay, 97. Okay, so now you covered the knight. Respect, respect. Now it's covered. So I'm going to switch it up and not go pin anymore and put the bishop on d3 and look at h7. And I'm going to go h4. And I'm not going to tell you why. It's a little bit of hope chess. Um, all right, queen d7 is interesting. Yeah, I got to go bishop b5, right? No. I don't know. I'm going to go queen e2. Go queen e2. Maybe they're castling queenside. Maybe I'll castle queenside. All right, so they're castling queenside. Okay. I'm gonna do the same. I think I just kind of like the symmetry in that. I think I have a little bit more space. I didn't punish Black's play though. Black has actually kind of recovered really nicely, and I think Black's mission is legit right now. So I'm a little bit dissatisfied with the way I handled that, but you can't win them all. So the problem is now Black's trading more pieces, and this actually is a good thing. These trades help Black's cause considerably. So and now it's A2 is hit. I'm gonna go A3. Am I gonna? Yeah, I'm gonna go A3. Uh cover the B4 square so the knight jumps. I recognize I'm allowing Queen A2, but I'm actually not worried about that. It's funny, if queen a2, the queen would actually be trapped after bishop c4, queen a1 check, king c2, and the queen would actually be trapped on a1. f6 I don't love because of bishop c4 with tempo, but let me go king b1 first and check the temperature. Because also it would be nice to get my rook to c1. Um, Go bishop c4 now. Queen e4 check is a move. I think I'm a tiny bit better, microscopically better, uh, because this h4 move gives me a little bit more space. I have a little bit more space in the center with my pawn in the fifth rank. Queen d6 is an excellent move. Really good play so far from black. I'm going to go queen c2. I have to play against the e5 break now. Black gets to play e5 and cleanly and trades another set of pieces. Black has at least equalized. So I'm really need to make sure e5 is not possible. It's not possible right now because of the discovery on the queen on d6. So that's the dynamic. All right, knight a5 makes a lot of sense actually. Bishop d3, I think, is the move. I need to cover some light squares, but this knight is interesting. Maybe bishop d5, trying to come in and play against the b3 square makes sense. I'll probably scoop my rook over to c1. A lot of interesting themes here. But black is doing excellent job. Excellent, excellent job. Do. It is raining in Brooklyn, and it's been a while. Like, I feel like there was like they had this thing in October where there was like a drought, and I was like, a drought? Like, this isn't supposed to be LA. How are we in a drought? But there was one. All right, I'm gonna go bishop e4. I'm trying to deter e5 here, so that's the idea. I'm still staying connected to the queen on d6 with this move. Um, but all right, f5. Okay, so if I take, the e4 square is a bit soft, so I think I'm gonna go back now. But this is a little small victory. It's not always, you got to recognize the small victories. The e5 square is now ripe for the picking later in the game for my knight. So I think I that was a little successful maneuver I'll take, and I'm gonna go h5 to make the g7 pawn backwards. So it's sometimes it's the small victories too, folks. It's not all about the big wins. Um, I'll go honestly, playing for g5 is clever because then g2 is weak. Hmm. All right, I'm gonna go queen e2 back because I want to meet g5 with en passant and then g3. Very competitive game. Very good game so far. Hmm. E5. Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna take on f5. It's time. I did as much preparation as I possibly could. Got to protect my bishop there. And this is a slightly better position for white, in my opinion, but very impressively handled. Very impressively handled. And I'm going to try and trade queens because I think I have a really good chances in this endgame now with the rook hitting c7 and g7. And yeah, this is winning. My rook is a little bit too active. Um, the king is a little bit too passive, and this should be enough. Should be. So I'm going to go bishop e4, trade some more pieces. I am 2 pawns up, which is significant. And the king is cut. So the king being cut is a huge, huge thing because basically I can go g5, h6, h7. which is should win the game. So g5 is a pawn sack, and the idea is that when the pawn gets to h7, I have this critical check, which allows me to queen my pawn on the h file. So that's why black's sacking the rook, and now I'm just going to bring my king up here. My rook can come behind the pawn just to make that not an issue. And I'll even let the pawn queen, but I'll take it. And then, yeah, this is I'm wrapping this one up. But this was a very competitive game, very impressive from my opponent. So check, getting the king to the back rank with opposition. Um, I'm chasing the king here. Gonna bring back here. I always thought the easiest way to checkmate with rook and king, if you don't know the fast way, is to keep your king a knight's distance away from the king, and then you need it to be their turn. So now that it's their turn, I'm just gonna move the rook once, and if it goes back, it's gonna be caught in the opposition fire again. So I just keep it a knight's distance away, and then when it's in the corner, it has to come back. So then when it has to come back, you're good. So if you need to checkmate, if you're kind of trying to figure out how to checkmate rook king versus king, keeping that knight's distance when you're cutting the king off is really helpful. So, all right, good game. Really good game. Really good game actually. Adjusted really well after the opening, and yeah. All right, what's up, King Cow? How we doing? Um, all right, so I didn't play a Caro-Kann. That was another request, so I will oblige that request. And I'll try to make it the Caro-Kann and not the Caro-Can't. Knight c3. The two knights is actually one of the most annoying lines to play against, actually, as a Caro-Kann player. It's one of the reasons I stopped making it my regular opening, because white gets the bishop pair basically for free. And yeah, now for that bishop pair, black has a nice chain, and the pawns tend to stay on light squares to kind of block out the bishop on f1, but it's still annoying. It must be said. So yeah, so white is ever so slightly better in these structures, ever so slightly better. And yeah, I mean, I got to fight against that. So let's see. Okay, so bishop e2, bishop d6, castles. I'll go queen c7 first. Why queen c7? I want to at least tease the idea that I might castle long. And yeah, now d4. Now I'll take, because I didn't want the fork, I'll take on e4. I'll play knight f6. And again, white is slightly better with the bishop pair, but it's not necessarily super easy to prove in practice. And black's structure is very compact. And queen d3 is actually a slight mistake. And the reason for that is I have this nice maneuver where I check on h2, and then I go bishop f4, and the trade of the dark square bishops is really getting rid of that bishop pair is quite favorable for the black side. Black can avoid the trade of bishop. White can avoid the trade of bishops here, but it's not ideal. So now I can go a5, hit the bishop again. It's a nice tempo. Um, and the king on h1 is ever so slightly misplaced because it should be protecting the f2 pawn, but it's not. And after bishop a3, I'm going to insist we make that trade. I'm going to insist. So really, if you really want to keep the bishop on the board, you could have brought it back to e1, but no one would be happy about that. But it'd be maybe a temporary home. You might go g3 first and so on. But trading those bishops, so now I don't even have to take right away because I want a castle, and if I took right away, the queen would prevent me from castling. But getting rid of that bishop it's like the exchange that I want, and now I get to play against the center, and it's just easier to play black now. So yes, I'm gonna double my rooks. I'm gonna get everything nice and tidy. And yeah, black's position is all right. Queen b6 looks nice to me. Um, Just looking at provoking b3. I'm gonna go h5, giving my king an escape square. Also seems reasonable to me. And it's a very slow affair where eventually you constantly have to be thinking about c5 or e5 at some point, trying to undermine the d4 pawn. It's just not easy to handle. Although it's still about equal. Like nothing has gone terribly wrong. Queen d3 might not be great though, because now I can maybe play against this pin. So now I feel like I need to play c5 or e5 here just because of the queen being pinned, and it's a question of which one's better. If c5, d takes c5, rook takes e3, c takes b6, and I don't win a rook because the bishop's protecting f1. So c5, d takes c5, I have to take back with the queen. I'm hitting the rook still. My pawn on b7 is loose. Queen c2 probably. We have more trades, and then bishop takes d1, and I'm not winning a pawn there yet. If I go e5, I'm still threatening to take, and I don't see what they can do about it. So I like e5. E5 it is. Queen f5. Okay. I'm going to take on d4. And one of the key ideas is queen f5 does stay attached to the f7 pawn. Or sorry, the h5 pawn, but I could throw in g6 here. Hmm. I kind of like that actually. G6, queen moves somewhere. Yo, I kind of like that though. Or it does make my knight unprotected. So take, and maybe just rook takes, bishop takes. Yeah, I like going in g6. All right, so I spent a little bit too long on some of these decisions, but most of the points still stand. That I'm playing against a potential IQP in a moment. I have relatively decent control. So rook takes d4, and yeah, now queen takes d4, and everything is tidy, and I'm just a pawn up. All right, so that's a good move. Queen b7 is queen c7 is an excellent move, undermining my structure. That's a great move. And I can't defend b7 and a7. I don't want to push this one. So how do I deal with this? And rook d1 is a threat. That's a great move. Because of those things, I think I have to address this in a way that's a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to go rook d7. And queen b2. And bring my king to g7. And I'm slightly better because the bishop on f3 is not great. But I got to talk less and move a little bit faster because this is definitely not an easy position to navigate. So now I'm attacking the pawns here. I'm attacking both pawns. I'm going to take on f2. That's a huge pawn to win. Um, and now I'm going to try and press on the dark squares a little bit. Queen e1. Oh, I can't go queen e1 check. Hold on. Let me defend that pawn real quick. So I'm making some really weird moves. Really, I want to get my queen kind of around to a place where it can do something. And now I'm going to trade queens because my knight can swing around to c5. So Pretty good defense actually, by King Cow. Pretty good defense. I think right at the end there was whoa. All right, I'm discovering something that I didn't I made my last move. I went from winning to losing. So check this out. So I traded queens being like, "Oh, my knight's getting to d7, it's over." This is a beautiful tactic. After knight d7, bishop takes c6 wins. And the point is that I don't have to take the bishop, but knights are notoriously bad at dealing with a pawns. So if I play pawn takes a6, my knight can't actually control one of these squares to our queens. The more fascinating detail, though, is that after knight takes c5, which you might say, "Oh, I'm all good now, what's wrong?" Still bishop takes b7. And after knight takes e7, a6, the pawn is going through. And so that's a remarkable position. And it actually be winning. And the other additional detail is if the G pawn was gone, it would be a draw because my king could sit in the corner because it's the wrong color bishop. So it's the wrong color corner. So because of those things, because the presence of the G pawn and this A pawn being the rook pawn being a nuisance to the knight, it actually would be a winning position at the end, which is crazy. And what it means is that knight d7 is a huge blunder, and I had to move the knight literally anywhere else. Like 98 would not anywhere else, but 98 would have been more palatable. Moving the king been palatable. So just goes to show, even till the end, there's sometimes you don't accept what I say, you know. But in general, really good game. I'd say white is always slightly better in these structures with the. Ooh, I'm talking too much. We got a new game. Um, I'll talk a little bit more while we get this one going. So I'll start with G3. What I'll say is white is usually better in those structures with the bishop pair playing against the Caro and the two knights Caro. But it's important you keep the pair. It really is. Because when you don't, the undermining begins. And I think that's what you saw for most of the game. All right, D5, C takes D5, Queen takes D5. No, not Queen takes 5, Bishop C5. This is a Gambit. I don't know. I don't think highly of gambits. I must tell you. Uh, but we'll see how good this one is. I'm gonna defend the pawn naturally. And can it now see now they want the pawn back. See what's going on here. Now they want the pawn back. All right, so normally I'd put the knight on f3, but I kind of want to keep the pawn. So I'm gonna go e3 now, bishop e2. Knight d7. They're really trying to get this pawn back now. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, they could have got it. Now they want it. All right, so I have the extra pawn. It's giving close Sicilian vibes because I have a fianchet bishop, Sicilian, reverse Sicilian type of stuff. Um, do I want to play e4 and really be greedy about keeping the pawn? I think I do. I think I do. I'm holding on to it. I am holding on. All right, so now d4 makes a lot of sense. I'm a pawn up and opening the position. We like that. We like that. And now d takes e5 that's a pawn, right? And then knight g4. Let me toss in e6. I like e6 because it breaks the connection between the bishop and knight and makes this move knight f4 a lot stronger, attacking the knight on g4. Oh, I didn't see that. I did not see that they could just take and reestablish the connection. That's a me problem. All right, so I'm going to take on d5 now. Maybe queen takes d5 check, maybe. Now I'm getting rid of this bishop. This bishop was the bane of my existence. It was bearing down an f2. It was the one thing that made me hesitant about defending defending the d5 pawn, pushing e4 as it opened up the bishop. So I want to get rid of it. And I really love this bishop on this diagonal. So can we make that happen? I'm going to try to make that happen. Put the bishop on b2, bearing down on h8. And yeah, it's things are going on. Do I want to trade pieces? Okay, I can trade. That's fine. And bishop b2. And okay, so mission accomplished. I got my bishop to this great diagonal. And now I just got to apply pressure. So let me start with h4. Nah, let me go queen d4. Let me centralize. So often what makes messes us up is we try to like do things, active things before we get all our pieces in the game. So let me not do that. Let me not be that person. So a3 because I want to move this rook away, but I don't want to give the pawn. I'm going to bring my queen back to c3, just keeping everything kind of tidy. Want to get my rooks to the center. They're trying to block. But guess what? They're going to go knight d4, probably. And I'm going to sack the exchange if they do that. For real, for real. All right, so rook d2. Let me double my rooks. The conversion here has not been the best, if I'm being honest, but it's still a good position for me. Still good position. All right. Let me go be play queen e3 and be a little sneaky. I'm keeping the tension, and I'm looking at queen takes h6, which was not allowed because this has been blocked. But I also can just take here a few times, and this should be good enough. I'm up material here, and my king is a bit safer, and those things should count. So I'm going to go b4 just to prevent queen takes a3, and then yeah, I'm just going to take more space. h4, maybe king h2, just slow and steady. No need to rush. Just chilling, checking the temperature. Just no need to rush. I'm going to go queen f4. No, am I? Yeah, I'm going to go queen f4. A queen trade is good for me. Why am I fretting about that? I'm doubling my pawns, but I still am up 2 pawns, and that's hopefully not going to change. I'm defending a3 now from capture, playing e5, looking at some more trades. Yeah, what's not to like? I'm going to go h5. It's a kind of a savvy move because I really want the pawn duo, and so what I'm doing is I'm creating the opportunity for the pawn duo to thrive. 2 connected passers is really, really valuable, and this pawn duo is going to be huge. It's going to be huge. Now it's like a weird trio. Um, all right, so I'm going to go king f3. I don't like that. I'm going to go rook h3. How am I going to convert this? Yeah, let me go king f3 and stop thinking in positions where I should be moving. And then rook d7. And then that's annoying. I'm going to go f7. They're going to take with check, which is not something that I initially wanted, but I still have this little pawn duo. Everything else doesn't matter. And then rook e7, and then the idea is e6 and rook e8 to get force those pawns home. And the rest is just window dressing. And we're pushing, going down the yellow brick road. Going down the yellow brick road. I'm not gonna lie, I usually like to not take all the pawns because I don't want stalemate. But here I'm kind of stalemating the pawn, so I'm gonna move this out the way just so it has some moves to work with. Just so if I make any stalemating mistakes, there's a pawn to move. One other way to avoid that, I'm just showing you practically what you can do. Let them move. Let give them a little some to work with in case you mess up stalemate. Then you can't mess it up. The other thing is just administering checks. As long as you're checking, then you can't really go wrong. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just doing check, 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 and then we look gonna get a little ladder checkmate. There we go. All right, that was an interesting game. I think the main thing was giving up the pawn on move 3 and then not recapturing it. You got to recapture the queen and play that position and see where that goes. That was definitely the vibe. And then yeah, later on it became interesting, but the main crux I think was giving up the pawn early in the game because you never got back on even material. So definitely play queen takes d5 if you play d5. Really, you want to take in the center with the knight. So I would say after c4, play knight f6 and then recapture the knight. All right, cool. Uh, Ben, you can hit me. I'm ready. I'm ready this time. All right, so e4. I haven't played e5 yet, so I'm going to play e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, Ruy Lopez. So I'm not going to go the Berlin out of respect for entertainment's purposes. I'm going to play a6. But so many top players play the Berlin, which is knight f6 without a6. Well, this is old school. You play bishop e7. Now you're threatening to take the pawn. Okay, normally they go rook e1 here. So now I actually could take the pawn because it wasn't defended. And yeah, my knight is attacked. I could go d5, but that's a little bit too complicated and invites knight takes e5. So knight c5 is much more sensible to me because I attack the bishop with tempo. And you can get, I'm saying, look, you can get the pawn back. You can take my knight and get the pawn back, but I'm going to have the bishop pair. And do I have to tell you these days what that means? Have you guys caught the vibes yet? Now, hold on. Did I make a mistake? I want to go back here for a second. Could I have gone knight d3 and put a lock on key on that pawn d4? I think I probably, we're going to check afterward. Knight d3 probably was the best move. I just kind of castled and ignored it. And black is still okay here, but knight d3 was probably the move. All right. Now my knight has to go to some weird square like e6 or d7. Hmm. I think e6 is a little bit better than d7. I still like black. There's a little bit of untangling to be done here, like rook e8, bishop f8, or rook e8, knight f8, something along those lines. And maybe, and then f6 will, I'll need to challenge the bishop, sorry, the knight with f6. And again, pushing the f pawn, I feel a lot more confident doing it if my opponent doesn't have a bishop of the color of the square I'm weakening. So f6 would weaken all these light squares, but they don't have a light squared bishop, and that's why it's more justifiable. All right, so rook e8, I think is what I said I was trying to do, right? Um, an argument could have been made to play f6 first. I'm hoping it's not a big deal. I think f6 first actually would have been a better move, though. And we'll see if white can capitalize on why. All right, so they didn't play capitalize. Queen h5 would have been very annoying because essentially then I would have allowed like some queen f7 check business. So it would have been better to start with f6, and I'm not gonna miss the opportunity the second time around. Um, okay, so f6, knight moving where? Knight back to f3. Um, I'm gonna go bishop f8. Clear the way for my rook. And now the light was a little bit soft, but I might get a bishop. Ideally, bishop e6 to f7 would be nice. Also, could put my queen on f7. And I think I'm going to have to do it that way. Queen f d7 to f7. Then bring my bishop out, then connect my rooks. I'm a little bit cramped right now, for sure. But once I consolidate, it won't be the end of the world, I think. So queen f7 there, kind of like I said. And white really honestly should be trying to advance in the center before I get all these moves in that I want. So, yeah, because if I get everything I want, I'm going to be happy. So now I'm going to try to go b6, a5. Um, I'm just trying to consolidate. Yeah, so c4 is a good move. It's like trying to disrupt what I'm trying to do. It makes a lot of sense, like for sure. That's what you got to do. All right, so I got it. My knight on e6 is so trash. All right, so I'm gonna go knight d8, and you might. This is a. Oh, actually, no. Knight d8's kind of bad. But is it though? Hmm. Tough decision, man. Yeah, I'm gonna go knight d8. I don't like d5 with tempo, and I wanted to be able to meet d5 with c5, shutting it down, shutting it down, and then maybe my knight can go to b7 and kind of hold the fort down over there. And the knight on b3 here is actually kind of bad. Like it's not good. Um, so that's what the point is. So rook, bishop f4, threatening to play rook e8 and bishop c7. So I got to trade, I think, and then play knight b7. And I'm just kind of holding things together till my rook can get in, and then the bishop pair can kind of assert itself. But it's very, very slow play, and I wouldn't encourage necessarily playing this way because it's very hard to do this. It's hard to do what I'm doing here. All right, so bishop d7. Whoops. And just as I say it's hard to do what I'm doing, I blunder. So now the c7 pawn is hanging, and that's a huge pawn. I should have moved that bishop to g4. That's a huge, huge pawn because it means my whole structure is kind of loose. So now the game is totally shifted, and I gotta play it a totally different way. I'm gonna pawn down. I still have some compensation because it's a bishop pair, but man, that's a huge blow. So how do I play it now? Um, hmm. Well, actively, I'm gonna play a5, a4, and try to really play actively, which you can argue is something I maybe should have done from the beginning, but it was hard. It's hard to play actively in a position where you're so cramped. So, I'm not losing yet, in my opinion. Like, it's not a totally lost position, but it's not good. I'll tell you that much. It's definitely not good. Um, I'm gonna go queen g6 and trade queens. So we might say, why are you trading queens and you're down a pawn? I like my bishops. They control a lot of squares around my king. My king is immediately safer when the pieces are traded. And I don't think it's easy to break this position down because I've gotten a lot of space on the queen side. So I don't even know what knight h2 is about. I don't know. But I'm bringing my king to the center. Oh, and that's what it was at, knight e3. All right, I'm going to take on b3 and get my rook an open file. Breaking the decision down is not going to be easy. It's just not. Um, and I'm gonna make it as difficult as possible. That's for sure. So bishop c7, okay, g5, g4, okay. I'm gonna go b4. Very, very ambitious. Probably bad, but ambitious. Bishop d6. I do not like bishop b6. Now the bishop is trapped. I've trapped this bishop, folks. And now rook a6. This bishop is trapped. Yeah, and that's gonna be the ball game because now I'm a piece up with all the control that I had before. My rook's gonna come back to a2. The b3 pawn is gonna be loose. I'm gonna go bishop e5, maneuver my bishop to c3. Then the b3 pawn will be weakened. And yeah, the game is turned. In the trade because trading is good when you're up material. And I'm gonna bring my king to d7 just to kind of control the pawn. And my knight's blockading this two pawns now. Now rook a3, trading the rooks too. No funny business. Wow, that turn, that for sure turn, but that was an excellent game by Youssef. It must be said. Okay, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, that was an excellent game. And look, I said I'd check after knight takes e5. I castled. I just was just like, oh, I'm gonna castle. I told you after the game, I'm gonna check knight d3, and knight d3 is indeed the best move, preventing d4 from happening conveniently. So there you go. I'm gonna see where I messed it up. So I was keeping an advantage here with these slow moves. Knight d8 actually was a great move. Okay. And yeah, everything was fine until this bishop d7 move where it went from slightly better for black to almost losing. And then at b5 is good. I had to be active. And where did the game turn? It turned with this bishop b6 move. No, actually, bishop b6 is a good move. After bishop d6, white has to play knight e4, hitting this bishop and the knight, which means I don't have time to trap this other bishop. So I had to move it back, and then the bishop's fine. So bishop e6 is a good move. Hard to keep up that idea, though, because it is in a precarious spot, but good game. All right, so that was it. That was it for this edition of the Banter Blitz. Thanks for tuning in. We do have a lot of exciting events going on. I guess I should plug them. We have, the freestyle chess going on, right? Between Fabiano and Magnus. Magnus won the first one today, so definitely tune in for the next one tomorrow. We got a world championship match in a few days. I did tease out the Ding Liren and Gukesh game match, so definitely tune into all that coverage. That'll be fun. And Ajay, do we got anything else to plug? Crazy House in the first week of December. If you don't know what Crazy House is, it's basically the way I think about it is it's like Bug House, but just with no partner. Because the pieces you capture, if I'm not mistaken, become pieces that you can use against them, right? I think. Okay. All right. So if you get tired of playing Bug House with other people and getting along and being like, hey, I want this piece, give me this piece, and they'll give you the piece, you get to basically play Bug House by yourself. That's what Crazy House is. So yeah, definitely tune in and yeah, have a good rest of your Thursday.